Welcome to the 7th Annual Creative Collingwood Symposium. Tanya, do you want to start us off?
Welcome everyone to the 7th Annual Virtual Creative Collingwood Symposium, themed Creativity Under Pressure. My name is Tanya Mazza, and I'm the Arts and Culture Coordinator for the town of Collingwood. We would like to begin by acknowledging that while we are all coming together for this event from different places, we do so on land that was and continues to be home to Indigenous people. I'm located on traditional lands of Wyandot, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, who cared for their families and experienced the escarpment and the waters and forests where I live starting thousands of years ago. Today, this area is still home to Indigenous people, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to meet and work here. So now I'd like to introduce my event partner, Tim Newton, who is the manager of the South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tanya, and thanks for bringing me in and for that land acknowledgement. Obviously, and always a very important part of any event that we run. Welcome, everybody. This is exciting, the 7th Annual Creative Collingwood Symposium. This time, of course, with a little twist, we've taken it online, but notwithstanding, we have an extremely exciting lineup for you today. My role in this is to introduce our keynote presenter and facilitator for the session. But before I do that, just a quick introduction about the Small Business Enterprise Center that I know many of you on the line are well aware of. But for those of you that are not, or perhaps less so, it's important for me to acknowledge the work that we're doing to support you, our business community. In 2019, we took on a project called Digital Main Street. In fact, one of our panelists today will be talking a little bit about his experience with running that program for us. But I want to be explicit in mentioning that there are supports for our business community across the entire region to access the resources and supports that are available through that program. There is, for those of you that are eligible for the one component, a grant deadline that is looming the end of this month. But beyond that, our digital service squad will be supporting businesses to enhance their digital plans and to transform themselves up to and including February 2021. The Small Business Enterprise Center also offers free consultation services to all and any businesses in and across our communities. And I know many of you on the line have utilized those services. Great to have you with us. But for those of you that have not engaged with us, we are here to support you. We are an advocate and ambassador for the growth, startup, and scaling, and in these days, retention of small businesses. If you haven't yet, please do engage with us. I'd now like to introduce our facilitator, Sandra, who has done a fantastic job of creating an incredible amount of energy at the beginning of this, conversation today. Sandra is a facilitator, a trainer, and a consultant who started her business in Collingwood almost 10 years ago. She is the creator of confab networking parties and brings her love of connecting people to our symposium today as MC. Sandra, I'll hand over to you and thank you in advance.
Thank you so much, Tim. Remember when you used to go to Real Things and you used to meet new people and you used to get all that excitement and the buzziness and the enthusiasm and the inspiration that happened when you did that? We're going to do that today, and we're going to do it in the comfort of our own homes in our slippers. It's the best thing ever. So these are our 5 amazing panelists. And I'm going to slow down so that we might have some hope of reading the bios as they're coming up. Alyssa McRonald makes woven weirdos, which are very fun to look at, and those should be coming up on the next slide any minute. Alyssa will be chatting with us first. Then next in line, we have Fred Pitt, who is a mindfulness coach. Luckily, Fred's timing will not coincide with the beeping of all of the devices all across the land. Ben Frisch is a digital marketer and an accomplished artist and published illustrator. He'll be in our 3rd slot. Patricia Gray and Mark Nadjawan are a creative duo whose work focuses on cross-cultural awareness and healing. Are we able to move into, yes, into the slides? There we go. Some great photographs of some of the artwork, and very much looking to them in the fourth position. And then Regan Hayward is a writer, artist, and curator, and she's going to bring it home for us. So we're just going to get right into it because we've got so much goodness crammed in that we just got to get moving. Let's make it happen. So Alyssa, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm excited with all the energy going here. So yes, I am a textile artist, and I live and work in Guelph, Ontario. And, you know, I was really looking forward to 2020. The year was set up for me. I had almost for the first time in my career, all I had to do was keep up with the momentum. Everything was booked, and I had spent the better part of 2019 creating bodies of work, one of which was continuing with my lady stars. This is, they're dolls based on female musicians. This is Lennox. And I had just moved into a dynamic community-based studio space, and then lockdown happened. And of course, we soon realized that we were in it for the long haul, and even my studio closed. So I was at home, and people were left doing their best to reschedule, to cancel, to move things online, and of course there was big uncertainty. I was grateful for the innovative solutions that were coming up at the beginning of putting stuff online and sort of the scramble. But I was also feeling skeptical and disappointed, and I really lost my momentum from pre-pandemic. I was mourning sort of the sense and loss of community that I had had in my studio, and I was very worried that I lacked the skills to present my work in the way I wanted to online. And then I started seeing calls to artists on social media, mostly on Instagram, and asking for artists to create work and use certain hashtags so that you could find each other sort of across the world. One like the Artist Support Pledge, which is great. It created a way to draw people to new work and encouraged artists to purchase each other's work as well. And then I noticed local Guelph 2 collectives, Otherwise Studios, which is a great studio in Guelph that teaches, has classes, all sorts of fun stuff. And Bummeroo, which is a music collective here, both in Guelph, and they put on concerts and music shows. And they paired to offer an online residency, pairing musicians and visual artists. I got paired with a singer-songwriter called Missy Bauman, and the ask was to really experiment and explore together to navigate online spaces. And that looked different for everyone. So we did have online Zoom meetings, and Missy and I primarily kept in touch via email and texting. And it took place over about 6 weeks. We did a doll and song exchange where I created a doll, she created songs, and we swapped and created based on each other's work. And it left me feeling connected to the artistic community and to other artists. And it made me realize that community can be built in different ways. And some of the ways these online platforms can really aid in creating more accessible spaces, which is amazing. I feel like everyone got more creative during the pandemic. We were all taking creative risks. Myself, I was taking creative risks with technology, and I knew it was going to be imperfect. And I knew that everyone was doing the same thing. And it has greatly benefited my artistic practice during this time, and I'm bringing a lot of those skills forward. And I know we're going to go back to in-person openings and making art in groups and taking classes and attending art fairs. And I think that technology gives us more options to connect with others. And it's exciting to think that they don't exclude each other and that they can be combined to make something greater and wider reaching. And I know that the artistic field is hurting right now. And I also feel that it's going to come out of this stronger, and it's going to come out of this more accessible in combining these online platforms with in-person meetings. So thank you very much.
Please join me. Please join me. Let's do this thing. Oh, I love it. And if you're not using your video, or if you want to use the reactions, let's just love bomb that. I love that very beautiful and optimistic vision of the future and all the things that we've learned in the past year and how we're going to move them into the future. So feel free, by the way, to pop into the chat and give some of those ideas some love, share some of your key takeaways so that we can all be helping each other to really walk out of here with some fresh insights. Thank you so much, Elisa. Fred, it's over to you. Fred Pitt, mindfulness coach. Have at it.
I'm going to read some quotes that I found about creativity and then offer a definition of mindfulness. So creativity, expressing your ideas in full contact, full color way. And that's from Pamela Slim, an author. Shane Snow, an American journalist, says, going to unexpected places. The neuroscientist Michael Gripko says it's our brains doing what they do. And here's an interesting one from an author and a .com guy, Seth Godin. This might not work. Love that one. Mindfulness practice consists of developing 3 skills: concentration power, sensory clarity, and equanimity, which is the ability to let sensory experience come and go without the push or pull of things like judgment, aversion, fantasy. So you practice mindfulness to learn how to unclutter your mind from things like worry and judgment and make room for things like insight, happiness, and creativity. I grew up in a family surrounded by music and attended music schools and programs where I learned to play the viola, the piano, and the trumpet. When I was 15, I was selected to attend McGill University on weekends in a special program for high school students where they created an orchestra to train us in our practice. At our first practice, when it was time to tune up, the conductor asked to hear each player individually. The fact that at my high school I had never even tuned up is a whole other story. But anyways, this was the first time I'd played anything for this conductor, and first time I'd played in front of all my new orchestra mates. So I wanted to create the clearest tuning note possible and play the note as beautifully as I knew I could. Well, when it was my turn to play that one note in front of everybody, I became so nervous that I started to shake and my tuning note came out like a wobble. I was devastated. What got in the way of me creating that beautiful note? In business, I've had a successful career as a high performer, somebody who delivers results and continually exceeds expectations. I reached very senior levels, leading large divisions, developing future leaders, winning awards for innovation and creativity. When I reached the height of my career, the pressure began to build and became so intense that I started to question my ability to lead. I questioned my ability to be innovative, to be creative. I hit the wall and I experienced burnout. So why was I so nervous tuning up that trumpet? And why did I experience burnout at work? Well, I was in my head. My negative self-talk, self-judgment, emotions like fear, fear of rejection, anxiety, my physical stress reaction to those emotions, tight muscles, cramping, sweating, butterflies, shaking, weight gain, imposter syndrome. What are they or what will they think of me? Any of these sound familiar? They were all in my head. all in my head. It was so packed with that stuff up in my head, there was really no space for anything innovative or creative to happen. So I was really getting in my way. Then I discovered mindfulness. My mindfulness practice has allowed me to identify and deal with the ways I've let myself get stuck in challenging emotions, worry, and judgment. It's opened me up to my natural capacity to bring quiet and balance to my mind and body. And it's enabled me to explore being creative, to develop new behaviors, new solutions, new perspectives, new beautiful trumpet tuning notes. The bottom line, it's about allowing the creativity to happen, creating the space we need to allow, and getting out of our way. Concentration power, sensory clarity, and equanimity. The practice of building these three skills is mindfulness. A result of practicing these three skills is freeing up the space to be creative. Another result can be happiness, so that's pretty cool as well.
Oh, I have to center my natural exuberance because that feels very centering as a sound bell. Thank you so much, Fred. Again, please join me in silent ovations and love and putting into the chat some of your takeaways and some really great insight there about making space for creativity in the place where it matters most, right there. Thank you so much, Fred. All right, Ben, over to you for our next topic.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. I'm Ben Frisch from Be Fresh Media and Digital Service Squad representative for Simcoe South Georgian Bay. And I wanted to talk today about the impact of COVID being, driven online, driving a lot of artists and creative people online, driving a lot of businesses in general. And we've been working directly with a lot of businesses to help to build those digital tools and keep businesses active during this time. And so I wanted to talk to this wonderfully creative audience today about thinking like a creative and acting like a marketer. Because here's the thing, most digital marketers are technical people. That shouldn't really come as a surprise. But the fact is that digital marketing is really easy to learn. Speaking from experience, the fact is that you as a creative person have what every marketer wants, and that is creativity. It's a much harder thing to learn. And I feel like I can say this with a bit of authority. I come from a fine art background, having spent most of my 20s pursuing fine art, and it was a tough haul, but that's where I'm coming from, and some of the experience that I bring to the table. And so I know that essentially, anyone can learn to boost Facebook posts. They can learn to, set up AdWords campaigns really easily. And if you don't believe me, go to YouTube and search for how to create a Facebook advertising campaign in 2020, and you will be inundated. You'll find more videos than you have time to watch. And they'll be the most helpful step-by-step guides that will teach you how to do it. And it's really quite simple. What is harder to teach or harder to learn, and that you probably won't find much on YouTube, would be how to be creative, how to think creatively, and come up with just really unique ideas and creative ways of storytelling. It's something that, doesn't come as easily. And so when I think about my own experience as an artist, one of the mistakes that I made for sure was not putting myself creatively into the marketing process, which sounds odd, but it was true. I mean, I was approaching marketing from a very kind of, I guess, conservative or rudimentary approach. And right now, you know, with COVID and with shutdowns and everyone being forced online, there is a lot of opportunity here to explore different channels like social media, email, YouTube, and podcasts. You know, again, I want to just emphasize this question: how can you pour more of yourself into and your creativity into what you're doing online? What is something creative that you can do to build your audience? Not only will it make you stand out more, it will also allow you to connect with your audience on a more personal level. Plus, it will also make the process more fun and authentic and less of a chore. At the end of the day, however you want to make sales, so you need to act like a marketer. So sell, put yourself out there and make it easy as possible for your audience to buy. You know, so if you're a writer, you might have fun, flex those creative muscles by writing poems in your newsletter, but make them an offer, you know, 10% off your book, or for newsletter members, and a buy now button to complete the transaction in minutes. Or you might be a painter, you share pictures and videos of your process or your inspiration to Instagram stories, but you always have, you know, your link in your bio is to where people can buy prints. You want to be clear in your intent and make the process to buying your work, your book, your products as easy as possible. And you want to tell your story on whatever platform you feel comfortable with. And you can always learn how to use them with YouTube, with tutorials, with your digital service squad. That's what we're here for as well. So share what makes you unique. And don't forget, here's how you can buy. And that's it. I'm Ben Frisch. You can always find me everywhere at BFresh Media, all around the web. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Ben. Please join me in a silent ovation for Ben. That's excellent. And I really, I think there's some interesting things for us to think about collectively there in terms of the relationship between the kind of imposter syndrome that Fred was talking about, and the tendency that we often have, that Ben was referring to show up in our marketing as if we're totally different people, like not creatives, not full of fun ideas, not, you know, like we kind of get into a zone. So I invite us to think about that and to just bust out of that, that idea. Next up, Patricia Gray and Mark Nadjawan, a creative duo extraordinaire, and I look forward to hearing what they're going to be telling us. Meanwhile, do keep sharing in the chat some of your key takeaways. What ideas are interesting you today from what you're hearing? We've got some great topics. Patricia and Mark, over to you.
Hi, Sandra. Okay, hi, everybody. So we thought today we would use the medicine wheel as a template to address you all today. And the teachings vary from nation to nation, but essentially the medicine wheel teachings are pretty much the same at their core, at least. So, and we thought it would be a good template to use, you know, especially during these trying times, because it really is connected to finding balance in our lives, all aspects of our lives. So when you approach the medicine wheel, you approach from the direction where the sun rises, because that's a new beginning, starting of a new day. So that's obviously the east direction. They also call it sunwise rather than clockwise, because it really is following the sun around the earth. So they follow from the east to the south, to the west to the north. And the four quadrants that you see there, when I talk about balance, it really is important to pay attention to each one and try to be mindful of developing them equally. You know, that one is, you know, keeps the others in check. I mean, they're not spending too much time in one at the expense of something else. And the 4 quadrants can represent many things in Native culture. You know, the 4 seasons, the 4 winds, the 4 chambers of the heart, the 4 hills of life, birth, childhood, through adulthood to becoming an elder. And also, again, from the east, south, west, and north, representing the inner healer, connected to the emotional self aspect of self, inner teacher, the mental aspect, and in spiritual, the inner visionary, and in the physical realm, and this is something Fred was talking about, inner leader. Very important to be mindful that we all have leadership qualities. And as a psychotherapist, as well as an artist, I started to add the social and creative on the axes, as you can see, because they're very much important aspects of who we are as well. So in terms of the emotional self or the inner healer, I mean, art is a way to express our own emotions, but it also evokes emotions in other people. And as we learn to connect more deeply into what's going on inside ourselves, we're able to connect more deeply with other people and the world around us in more meaningful ways. It's impossible to make deep connections externally if we haven't gone inward first. And this way, art has the potential to become a portal of transformation, not just for ourselves, but for people viewing our work. And moving down to the next quadrant, talking about the mental aspect of the being, it's connected to teaching, you know, and today we can say I'm in a teaching role, but we're all teachers in our lives all the time. You know, it's to do with mind. So, but there's a saying that I've always liked, and it's that mind is meant to be a servant. It's a wicked master. And if I can come back to Fred again, talking about—
He's smiling there.
He's smiling, yeah. Talking about, you know, our thoughts, about 95% of our thoughts are repetitive. And if left unchecked, you know, well, 80% of those can be, you know, negative. And creating works of art, mind is important at certain stages, but of course, at some point we've got to let go and, you know, let go of mind so we can access something much more deep and much more profound, and that being creativity and intuition. So creative blocks, I think, come when we have too much head and not enough heart. And spiritual aspect, going to the West, that's to do with visionary. And it's important to find out what puts us in accord with our own true nature, and to actively and consciously seek that out. You know, finding what brings us inner peace. And the physical, and I'm hurrying because Mark has to talk, being mindful just to nurture our bodies through whatever means we can.
So just quickly, I'll speak just a few more words about the 2 axes that you see in the diagram, the creative and the social, and the creative aspect of the self. We're all creative beings, not only as artists, but, you know, even in our other jobs, you might say, as, you know, in parenting, grandparenting, cooking, landscaping. Ultimately, art in all its forms, whether it's visual arts or poetry or film or music, it's a way not only to articulate the musings of the soul, but it's also a way a means to relationship building, and that connects us directly to the social axis. I know in my work especially, as much as the images are the stories that accompany my work, and the relationship building I'm doing as an Indigenous artist is about reconciliation and renewal and resetting of relationships and healing and that sort of thing. Just to sum up this wheel, there's our time. I can do this in 15 seconds, I think. Don't think of those they're compartments, and Indigenous people are not compartmentalized. That's a very non-Indigenous value. If you would spin that wheel so that it goes so quickly that it's a blur and everything becomes one. Everything's interconnected and interdependent. I don't want people to understand that we're talking about a compartmentalized way of being. It's all ultimately a web, and it's intertwined and it's connected. I'm not unlike the blades of a helicopter. I think when they're static, you see the blades, but when they're moving, doing what they're supposed to be doing, it looks like a singular disc. Think of the medicine wheel like that. And that's it. Oh, quick shout out. Thank you to Sandra and Tanya for doing your homework in the territorial acknowledgement. Yeah. We're coming to you from Treaty 72 up here on the Saugeen Peninsula. Most of you will know that as the Bruce Peninsula. All right, Miigwech.
Please join me in giving some love to Patricia and Mark. What an interesting, I love the spinning of the wheel and how it's not compartments. I love that. There's so much energy and rich territory to explore in that. All right. And yes, reaction buttons. I do love to see the reaction buttons. Thank you, and keep the love coming in the chat. It's always good to be sharing some of the key takeaways, some of the ideas that are sticking out to you. That way you're also helping other participants like, oh yeah, that's true. What does that mean for me? So last but certainly not least, Regan Hayward is going to bring it home for us. Over to you.
Thank you to my fellow panelists and their enrichments that they've shared with everyone today. I hope to continue the conversation and consideration around different things with what artists are facing now with COVID. And I'm just going to share my screen so I can share my slides with everyone. Let me just get started. There we go. So my name is Regan Hayward. I'm a managing director for Beaux Arts Gallery. We're a not-for-profit artist-run space, which means that we have our own set of challenges in the art world. I myself am a writer and an artist. I'm predominantly an independent art curator. So I live and work in Peel Region, and being in a leadership role for a not-for-profit artist-run space has had its own set of challenges over the years, and a lot of them are precluding to adapting. And now with the challenges that we all face, an interesting prelude that Sandra shared with it was anxiety being the handmaiden to creativity. I wanted to build on that and to say, you know, it's often said that the antidote for that anxiety is taking action. And wasn't it the wonderful Picasso who mentioned that, as well as one of the great masters, saying that is the foundational key to all of our success. So it is an isolating experience that we're all going through, but the important thing about the experience now for most artists that I'm observing of the crew that I'm a part of here in Peel Region is that they want to stay active in their art making. And that is the antidote for their own personal anxiety. And of course, still wanting to ask the questions that artists ask about what everyone else is feeling through this COVID experience. We are also focusing a lot now, aren't we, on the courage of creativity. And, you know, in thinking about this, I was poised to remember, my goodness, you know, artists, we are courageous on good days and on bad days, because when we endeavor to practice our discipline, whatever it is that it is for whether it's writing or creating music or painting, anything of that artistic nature, it's about, as the great mind Thomas Merton said, you know, art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. And that alone takes courage. We are facing the impacts of COVID, and yet there's still so many unknowns. So we, you know, we still move forward in that hope, and art helps us sustain, and art helps us find our center and share it and help other people. And I think as an artist, that is exactly what we're called to do in whatever discipline that it is that we practice. When we're talking about the courage of creativity, we are really poised right now, and I mean we're talking about creativity under fire here today. We're really poised right now about this particular level of stress that we're facing. As I've shared, as we all know, the impacts of COVID, but also we have a lot of, you know, at this time we have a lot of social causes that are also creating, you know, different pockets of unrest and wanting to be considered. And in the arts, we are, you know, we're impacted by our environment as much as we influence it. And as other, my co-panelists have mentioned through their talks as well, and I'd like to mention it here today, that creating in times of stress is really about the soul level connection. The artist connecting to their soul and the creativity that pours out from that. And as well as sort of taking the lead and showing others maybe how to soul connect on those levels. And we want to do that. We should seek to do that really, because ultimately, as a lot of the modern contemporary artists are proprietors of, and I hope we share that sentiment, as Pedro Reis, the contemporary Mexican artist, says, I definitely believe that art is the best way to produce social change. And I hope overall that we as artists will be able to play a part in that somehow. So sustaining the COVID impacts and helping the greater good for the social causes that we all face through our creativity and through our art making. We do that, we seek to do that at our arts collective here in Peel Region. And it's a magnificent struggle, but we're glad to show up and be a part. And things like today, thank you to this symposium, which is there to enrich us all and share and care, and these ideas are wonderful takeaways. Thank you.
Please join me in a silent ovation. Oh, fabulous. And the reactions and the hearts and the clapping, all of it. Oh, fantastic. What an amazing rapid fire series of great ideas and insights to reflect on. Thank you, everyone on the panel and in the audience for your participation. And now I want to throw it open for questions. So I'm going to invite you, if you've got questions for the panelists, that you can pop into the chat. That would be fantastic. I'm going to start us off, because I already have the mic. I'm going to start us off with a question kind of riffing off of something that Regan was saying just at the end there about art is the best way to produce social change. And I want to invite the panelists to unmute yourselves and weigh in any way that you would like on the question of what can art do for us in this moment? What does art do for us in this moment of 2020 and all of the complexity and the opportunity and the challenge that has been 2020? So really, what can art do for us in this moment? I want to start with Alyssa, please.
Well, I think that creating art and being creative helps you process everything that's going on, for me anyway. And I also think that creating art together as a community, and I've been involved with some other projects that were community facing, and it just gave everyone the opportunity to speak to what they were feeling and share it. And I think that's amazing. Like, that's what we need more of.
Yeah. There's a lot of swirling feelings in 2020. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to invite other panelists to comment on that. Patricia and Mark, did you have anything you'd like to kind of say about that?
For sure. I mentioned in the presentation that writing was an important component in terms of the stories that accompany my images. We are Indigenous people, after all, ultimately oral cultures in most cases. We were telling stories long before we were drawing pictures or petroglyphs or pictographs, always telling stories. So the stories are important. And I did a piece last year called Emissary, featuring prominently a turtle. But in the writing for that piece that folks would see on my website with that image, I addressed the messages that we need to be listening to in the context of this pandemic, the teachings, and how we have to pay much greater attention to the way that it is that we relate to the planet and beings that we share the planet with, because this is not working. And we see the results in this pandemic as a result of that poor relationship. And Indigenous people have a lot to offer in that regard, being earth people and always historically and even today still connected to the world around us in ways that non-Indigenous cultures have largely become disconnected from. In terms of the role of the artist, and I'll just end with this. I'm going to share, I'm glad to have the opportunity. We had this ready and this is perfect. In terms of the role of the arts in this pandemic, here's a very short poem. It's called simply Artist. And I'll just preface it by saying we throughout this pandemic, there's a vocabulary of the pandemic that we've all become familiar with. And one of the terms, or some of the terms in that vocabulary, is things like essential and non-essential, in terms of lockdowns and shutdowns and who's essential and who's not. So this poem addresses it. The poet is Madhu Raghavendra. I don't know much about him. I believe he's based in India, but it's called The Artist, and it says simply, I don't mind being the non-essential. Even a child takes its mother for granted. It does not run back to its mother until it's hurt. Nobody first thinks of water when they arrive at an exquisite dinner party until they are choking. I don't mind being the non-essential, knowing you will come looking when things are broken and nothing else works. Art is non-essential until it is not.
Oh, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mark. That made me a little teary-eyed. Anybody, any other panelists want to comment on the theme that we're on right now about what can art do for us in this moment? I'm just, I can't see you all on my screen. Regan, hi.
Art is definitely, you know, interestingly enough, I mean, maybe not noted as being an essential service, but it's certainly a sustaining service. I have had plenty of inquiries of different community groups and stakeholders that have come to our visual art collective looking for guidance to do drawing and painting, you know, guided art therapy type of ideas, because people are sustaining a lot of stress with the impacts of COVID and feeling very isolated. And we've had more of those requests now out of from our arts collective than we ever had before. So I often say to, you know, I'm part of a lot of advocacy groups for artists as well. And often I say now in these conversations that we are a sustaining a part that can help sustain people, even in just how, you know, that whether it's feel good or think good. And that's of primary importance to, you know, I mean, if we are not able to thrive because of the limitations, we can certainly do our best to survive with quality components, and art can do that.
Love it. Love it. Fred, any comment from you on that?
Yeah, I've been, excuse me, listening to all the great comments. And I guess what I could say is, excuse me, from creating the space for art perspective, you know, Regan was talking about social activism and how, from a mindfulness perspective and creating that space to allow it to happen, mindfulness really creates connection. And it opens us up to connect and have better relationships with people, develops compassion. So certainly as we go through, the pandemic is one thing, but all the other social upheaval that we're going through, I think that that ability to have better relationships, to be connected with people, to have compassion, and to get through that together is really important, rather than coming at things from separate places and remaining separate. So I guess that's what I would say on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fred. And I'm gonna pick up on that that thread of connection and compassion. Ben, unless you have something you want to weigh in on, we can come back to that topic. But unless you have something you want to weigh in on what can art do for us now? And I think in your case, I'd be particularly interested in what can art do for us now as people in creative businesses, as creative entrepreneurs? How can we, I love what you were kind of the thread you were pulling of bringing your creativity even into how you think as a business person, as a marketer. Do you have any other sort of comments on that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, kind of piggybacking off of the last question too a bit. I think I was on YouTube the other day doing some research, and you know, one of those pre-roll videos, those 5-second videos, actually wrote me in for like 20 minutes because it was such a good story that they were telling, and it just kept me there. And so, you know, it's a great example, I think, of, you know, melding art and creativity and storytelling with advertising. And in this particular case, I mean, it was for a charity that was drilling wells like all over the world. So it was actually for a great cause too. So I would even say, you know, that's potentially an example of where art can really change the world. You know, it can guide that storytelling, that that message to a broader audience and just really hit it home.
Oh, so good. So good. I love that. I love that. And actually, I'm not going to go where I thought I was going to go. I'm going to go to a different place. And where I'm going to go is I want to bring us into, because we do have the Small Business Enterprise Center here. This is the Creative Collingwood Symposium, and we have lots of creative entrepreneurs here. And one of the things I'm interested in hearing from the panelists about is the business of art in 2020. So what is changing in the business of art, and in how art is being monetized or not monetized? I know at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a lot of things where the artists kind of en masse appeared and were doing lots of things that were unpaid, obviously not sustainable in the long term. Also, I hope that as the pandemic has gone on, we have realized that we want to pay for art. We want to pay for all the things that we want to still have when we get out of all of this stuff. And so, Regan, I want to start with you, I think, on the business of art in 2020 and what's happened in 2020 that you think is going to move forward with us.
You know, I had a great conversation with the artistic director of performing art theater early on in the pandemic, who was encouraging me at the time to do everything that I could to keep our not-for-profit artist-run space alive. And he is at the end of his career preparing for retirement, as he prefaced it to me. And he said, you know, no matter what, and all the historical components he studied about art over centuries, that typically art always gets really hard hit in times like these. And I'm going to share with everyone something that he shared with me, and that was that essentially, as we roll through all the impacts of this type of global health pandemic, this tidal wave economic impact, that it really will call on the artists of any craft to be absolutely authentic in their art practice and their art marketing, if you will. So interesting to Ben's point there about bringing authenticity to your marketplace. It is so key to going forward and separating. I mean, another thing to say that myself studying curatorial development, there's a thing that's really alive and well in the art sector, and that is art theory and art criticism. And I always say, you know, nobody likes criticism, and we want to be constructive about that in this modern era. But it is still alive and well in the art sector. So to be constructively critical is to say that as a practicing artist, we have to really be true blue to our craft. And so what does that mean? That means we have a lot of people that will be practicing art for different reasons, and then we will have the artist that is absolutely dedicated and called upon and compelled to create the art that they will.
Good news, it works, it works. All right, I think we have proven in 2020 that emergencies are no big deal for us. We are entirely capable of handling them. Thank you very much.
Sandra, I thought there would be an easier way just to mute me. Yeah.
I love it. Regan, do you want to?
So, no, but just to conclude, I mean, I think that what is this going to mean for the business of the arts going forward? It's going to mean that we are, you know, I don't know who said it out of New York, but that there was we had an incredible amount of artists surfacing over the last 5 to 10 years. And I think going forward, we're going to really have a refinement of artists and the art that they practice. And that will be the impact of COVID overall.
Ooh, interesting. I love it. I love it. Alyssa, do you have comments on that idea about the business of art in 2020 and how it's changing?
Sure. So what I noticed was people coming together and being really generous and promoting, like this sort of promoting each other, and things like I mentioned with the Artist Support Pledge hashtag, which was basically just awareness of, you know, here's what I have, here's what I'm selling, and a cross promotion of that too. And I think it was great. I mean, it opened up communication across space. So I think that's been great as well. And also taking the time, like Toronto Outdoor Art Fair went online, and they had a beautiful website where you could really take the time to look. It wasn't just you were running through the art fair, like hoping to see who you know, people who you had maybe pre-designated to see. You could really take your time going through the website and sort of getting to know the artists and not just what they make kind of thing.
Love it. Thank you. That's great. And I know many of the big art, as well as some of the craft shows have gone online with mixed, I think, success and results, but it's early days yet. So that's good to see. I'm looking for maybe if Mark and Patricia might have just a closing comment on that theme of the business of art, and then I'm going to move us into our next thing. So we'd love to hear from you, Mark and Patricia, on the business of art in 2020 and how it's been different.
Yeah, it's shifted. So we built a studio gallery last year thinking that this summer of 2020 would be our first to start to make some of the money back that went into the building, but that changed. So, you know, again, you have to be so creative. We moved everything outdoors in an exhibition tent, and so many of the shows were canceled. So, you know, just taking risks, as Ben, I think, was talking about taking risks as well, just getting online and doing things that perhaps you haven't done before, like this today, you know, and just trying to be creative and say, how do we move forward? And I don't think there was ever a time that, it's not that it wasn't challenging, but I think we both rose to it very well. And it was just acceptance of what is, and just put things in place that, what are we going to do in response to it? And yeah.
And in terms of some of the events, as the other presenters will know, or folks watching will know, did very well. These various organizations, shows, wherever they might have been, did very well in a lot of cases to quickly shift gears and go to online format. So those festivals went ahead. So if there are local folks, for example, on here, Summerfolk, everyone in the region will know about the Summerfolk Festival, which of course was canceled, and I'd been there for a number of years, but they went virtual and had a one evening event only where they had a few of the vendors and I think, you know, 5 or 6 acts. So it was learning how to do that and get on board and be aware of those kinds of initiatives. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. And Ben, actually, I think you have a little plug you could make here that might be relevant and timely.
I just wanted to add to the conversation of the business of art. One great program through Digital Main Street is the Shop Here program, which is essentially getting a Shopify website built for you. You get training on how to use it in order to sell art, and it is available to, or eligible to, artists and at-home businesses. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat here to learn more about that program.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to, so can we let's just give all the love at once now. So as much silent ovationing and loving as you've done, let's put it all together now and just really, really shower our panelists with gratitude for their amazing ideas and insights. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great. All right. Let's move to the next thing. So for the next thing, we've been sitting now for an hour or so, which is, I believe, almost the limit of human endurance. And so I would like to move us into something a little bit different. So if you arrived, if you were here sort of at the very beginning of this, you will have caught me saying, this is not a webinar. And the reason that this is not a webinar, the reason we've done this as an interactive meeting, is because it is time, my friends, to interact. And so in a moment, you will be getting an invitation to disappear briefly into a breakout room where you will find other lovely people. And with those people, we are proposing that you take, let's call it 12 minutes or so, to have a conversation about this topic. And I'm going to post it in the chat, so don't worry, you'll have it. Maybe Tyler actually will post it in the chat while I pretend to post it in the chat because I'm reading at the same moment. And here is the question. What has the pandemic taught you about the care and feeding of your own creativity? What practices or resources or tools are you finding most helpful right now? So a little bit of a riff off of some things maybe that Fred was talking about, but maybe your practices are completely different. Maybe there are things like Alyssa was talking about of being involved in exchanges with other kinds of artists and in new relationships with other kinds of artists. We want to hear about all of it. We want to be getting some of these ideas out there. So what has the pandemic taught you about the care and feeding of your own creativity? What kinds of tools and practices and resources are you finding most helpful?
Who would like to? Alyssa, would you like to start with that? Or I see you're already unmuted.
Sure. Yeah, I thought we were all gonna. Sure. Yeah, just listening to Fred and some of the other panelists, for me, I guess it's been really helpful to remain in that space of trying to be mindfulness and like pulling the anxiety in and being like, okay, reminding myself we're in the middle of a global pandemic. It's okay. There's so many things going on. And then letting myself be able then to enjoy creating.
I know when when it was first announced in the middle of March, the anxiety, I had anxiety through the roof the first 3-4 weeks. I was thinking, oh my goodness. And being, I mean, I'm a practicing artist, but as a curator and a gallery director, I'm always thinking about, you know, the program 6 months from now, the program 1 year from now. And there was that light at the end of the tunnel was turned off. Or perhaps if there was any faint of light, you know, it was an oncoming train. So it was an anxiety feeling, you know. So to Alyssa's point, yeah, it took some time to sort of unwind from that, come off the ledge and just say, okay, you know, and how thankful I was. I don't know about anyone else, but I was extremely thankful to be Canadian. Still am. It wasn't a passing moment. Still, it's a continuum. But yeah, and to the point, to the question about resources and the tools that are helping us. I mean, at the early onset of the pandemic, they weren't rolling out anything, right? Because arts is not considered. You know, we are sort of last on the list from a government planning perspective and so forth. So, but when it did come around, they did come through. The different levels of government offered all kinds of things, and on Digital Main Street and all these great programs started unfolding. So I found those resources to be really helpful for myself and my artist friends and my arts collectives that I'm a part of. So.
And it was an interesting question for me. And one of the things that I've had to get comfortable with is isolation. Mm-hmm. So I moved up to Collingwood just over a year ago, and have family in the area, and I grew up in the summers in Southampton. So I know a fair number of people in this area, but I've spent a lot of time on my own. So in my house, working on Zoom and getting comfortable with that isolation and looking at it as a gift now rather than a roadblock or an issue, right? And it's the things that I've been able to do, and certainly from a mindfulness perspective, quiet's not a bad thing, but yeah, it's been really interesting going through that transition. It was something I struggled with at the beginning of this, but now I'm quite comfortable with it, and it seems to be working for me.
Last but not least, I would love for you to share one word, just one, because constraint, it makes us creative, right? I think we established that at the beginning. So one word about how has this experience left you feeling? I hope a little bit connected, I hope. And thank you for sharing this space with me. What fun we've had. So I look forward to all the follow-ups coming out of it, and I bid you adieu.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.